Welcome to the Mainspringer channel. I'm Parikh, and in today's video, we're going to talk about my top favorite watches of 2025. The way I've organized these watches is first we're going to go over the complication watches that I particularly loved. Then we're going to talk about some of the dress watches from 2025. We're going to talk about the chronographs, and last but not the least, we'll talk about the dive watches that were my favorites. The first watch I'd like to talk about is the Vacheron Constantin Perpetual Calendar Ultra Thin. Now this watch was released towards the end of the year. This watch has a 36mm case, less than 9mm in thickness, so it kind of wears like a classic watch dress proportion wise. However, what makes this watch particularly unique is they have a perpetual calendar fit into this watch in the classic perpetual calendar layout with the moon phase. And this is really where I think brands like Patek, Audemars Piguet, and Vacheron really shine and outdo themselves against the competition in order to package an automatic movement watch with a perpetual calendar in such an elegant package with a beautiful design. This is something where these high horology brands stand out. And in particular, I think across the board, compared to both Patek and Audemars, I think Vacheron doesn't get the credit they deserve. And this watch is a wonderful example of what they can actually do in terms of watchmaking. Now, obviously, not everybody has $100,000 lying around. That's almost like a down payment on a house. So this is really where brands like Frederic Constant come in with their perpetual calendar classic. And this particular watch is approximately 40mm in diameter, 12mm thick, but it does have the exact same layout of a perpetual calendar that the Vacheron has, including the moon phase, at less than 1/10 of the price. And this is fascinating because when it comes to watchmaking, bringing these high horology complications to the customer at an affordable price is really where you build value. And brands like Frederic Constant take that to the heart and really try to offer customers something unique that no other brand does. And I think this watch is a winner from that standpoint. The next watch I'd like to talk about is Nomos. Now, Nomos is Philippe Dufour's one of his favorite brands because of the exceptional value that they offer, the in-house watchmaking, the finishing to the movements, and what Nomos has done with their Club Sport Neomatic World Timer is they've brought the movement from the Zurich and put that in the aesthetics of the Club Sport, making this a very gorgeous world timer. And in the classic Nomos style, they've played with the colors to add that whimsy that you only get from Nomos. And this watch was a runaway success at Watches and Wonders and is probably on a lot of people's wish list. The last watch within the generic complications that I want to talk about is the Moser Streamliner Moon Phase Meteorite. I'm a huge fan of the Moser Streamliner. I actually own the Green Dragon. Generally, when Moser puts these aesthetics together, they're quite flawless in the way that execution is. And this watch is a fantastic example of that. They have this gilded gold meteorite dial, and they have this minimalistic moon phase in a way that only Moser does, that beautifully complements that meteorite dial. And all together in the Streamliner package, this is just a design success for Moser, as always. And I think it is one of my favorite picks of 2025. Moving now into the dress watches. The first watch I want to talk about is the Louis Vuitton Escale. Escale? Anyway, the Louis Vuitton Escale. And this is Louis Vuitton's dress watch in their portfolio of watches. Now, I think Louis Vuitton as a brand is going to become a powerhouse in watchmaking with both their financial backing, their ownership of multiple brands like Zenith and Bulgari, and I think they have the power to harness the strengths of all of these brands and put them together in a wonderful package. And this particular watch is a great example of that. It's got a 40mm case, approximately 10mm thickness. It's got a turquoise dial, but it doesn't stop there. They've carried the turquoise to the case outer in the form of a ring and then really built the case around that. And this must have been extremely hard because to source a thick piece of turquoise that is strong enough and flawless enough in order to cut a ring out of it and use that as the case of your watch is exquisite craftsmanship. And again, Louis Vuitton having having a background in fine goods, I think this is the kind of high-end watchmaking that we can expect coming out of this brand in the years to come. I particularly like the touch where they have the indices that resemble the hinges of the Louis Vuitton trunks at the 12.369 position, and that's a nice touch. The next dress watch I want to talk about is the Raymond Weil Toccata, and this is a ellipse-inspired design. Now, the ellipse design really came out in the 60s and 70s, particularly pioneered by Universal Genève, and of course later the more famous one is the Patek Philippe ellipse. And the ellipse design has of course been replicated by many brands including Vacheron and Piaget, and this is Raymond Weil, again very similar to Frederic Constant, bringing great design, very nice aesthetics, well-proportioned size down to your wrist at an affordable price. This is a hand-wound mechanical watch at sub $2,000, which is great value for the customer, especially if you're looking for a vintage-inspired ellipse design type watch. And trying to find a vintage ellipse watch in great condition is getting harder and harder these days, and this provides a fantastic outlet for those who are looking for that type of aesthetics. The next watch I want to talk about is the Furlan Mari Disco Volante with the Onyx dial. I'm a huge fan of Furlan Mari. Their design philosophy of vintage-inspired design brought to the consumer at an affordable price in the right proportions totally resonates with me. And among their watch releases, the one that has stood out to me has been the Disco Volante. I really like the Havana version of the Disco Volante. So the watch features the Disco Volante case, but what they have done is they have a onyx dial, and some of the hour indices are replaced by lab-grown baguette cut diamonds. Now, baguette cut diamonds is an aesthetic in watchmaking that you do not get until you spend tens of thousands of dollars on a watch. So the fact that lab-grown diamonds are indistinguishable from natural diamonds, and you are able to make them and offer them on a watch at such a price of $5,000 or lesser is in itself exceptional value for the customer. Moving on to the chronometers. The first one I wanted to talk about is the Angelus Chronograph. And this watch, again, nails it with the proportions. It's 37 millimeters in diameter. It's less than 10 millimeters thickness. It is a mono-pusher manual wind chronograph, exceptionally finished. And I think what really ties this together is that champagne dial on this yellow gold case, which just together is gorgeous. Again, at the end of the day, aesthetically, this watch is gorgeous. The pricing, that's always something to debate on. The next chronograph I want to talk about is the Grand Seiko Tokyo Lion. What I think Grand Seiko is trying to do here is start to compete with the likes of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak chronograph with this bold, brash design on your wrist on a rubber strap. What is super cool about this watch is, apart from the coloring of the dial, the grammar of design aesthetic that Grand Seiko has had throughout their entire watchmaking history lends itself beautifully to this sort of a design with all the faceted case edges and lines that it has to offer. And I think this watch is a total winner for what it's trying to be in the category that it's trying to be in. One tiny criticism that I may have about this watch is the thickness. I think if they can rein in the proportions and get the thickness of this watch to a point where it is in that sweet spot, slightly smaller, slightly thinner, I think this watch is going to be a runaway success. Moving into the dive watch category, there was only one watch I had in mind, and that is the Tudor Pelagos Ultra. Now, as you all may know, I am a huge fan of the Tudor Pelagos, and what they have done is doubled the dive capacity of the Tudor Pelagos with the Tudor Pelagos Ultra. It's got a slight increase in its case proportions with both the thickness and the diameter. However, I did have a chance to try this watch on my wrist at a Tudor boutique, and what I realized is the way the case is organized and the way they've played with the proportions, it doesn't feel any bigger than my 42mm Tudor Pelagos, and for some reason it actually felt even lighter than my Tudor Pelagos. And I think a lot of that has to do with the design of the clasp, how the proportions are laid out within the watch, and so on. All in all, I think this watch offers an excellent value. It has creeped up in price a little bit compared to the previous Tudor Pelagos, but for the price, I think the value that this watch offers is probably arguably better than what you would get out of any Rolex watch. So that's it. Those are my favorite watches for 2025. If If there are any of these watches you think I may have missed, please do let me know in the comments below. There were a ton of releases, and I'm sure there's a bunch of watches that I may have missed to cover or didn't catch my attention in the way it probably caught yours. So let me know in the comments below on what your thoughts are for the favorite watches of 2025. And also, if you do have any questions for a Q&A session video, please do put that in the comments below. If you are new to this channel, I do appreciate you subscribing and hitting that bell icon. It's just a click for you, but it means a world to me in terms of trying to grow this channel. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.